Section 1. Moving on to Section 2, the Muslim empires. So what modern countries are connected with the three Muslim empires covered in this section? One is the Ottoman Empire, and that's connected to modern-day Turkey. Another is the Safavid Empire, that's connected to modern-day Iran. Another is the Mughal Empire, and that is connected to India. So, fairly simple question. What are the chief differences between the Sunni and Shia forms of Islam? Well, it all has to do with the Caliph for our purposes. Remember, the Caliph is the successor of Muhammad. Right? The Caliph is the successor of Muhammad. Caliph literally means Muhammad. Sunni Muslims believe that the successor of Muhammad is chosen by the community, by kind of consensus among the members of the community. So remember we talked about the Ottoman Empire? Under Mehmet, they conquered Constantinople. And after they conquer Constantinople, Mehmet says, well, check it out. I just conquered the most important Christian city, the largest Christian church. I think I'm the Caliph. I'm the successor of Muhammad. And Sunni Muslims agreed, and he became recognized by Sunni Muslims as the successor of Muhammad because of this military conquest. And this will continue with the Ottomans. Shia Muslims, which are connected to Iran and the Safavid Empire, they don't think this way. They said that the Caliph has to be in the line of Muhammad. It has to be someone descended from Muhammad. Right? It's almost like a kind of king, in a sense. Right? It has to be someone in the line, family line of Muhammad, someone who can trace their lineage directly back to him. So they're a very different kind of Islam. So they're going to struggle over who should be Caliph, as well as how you should choose the Caliph in the first place. That one is still on there, what modern countries. I just accidentally doubled it up on the study guide. I had that question twice. What form of Islam is connected to the Ottoman Empire? What allowed it to rise? How did it treat non-Muslims, and why? So the Ottoman Empire, as I said earlier, is connected to Sunni Islam. Right? It's connected to Sunni Islam. And they're the ones that expand against the Byzantine Empire. And remember, they start off as raiders. They just attack Byzantine cities. But over time, right, they realize that the Byzantines are weak, and they can just take over. They don't have to raid and steal stuff and come back, leave. They can just stay. And what they start doing is saying to the people who work for the Byzantine Empire, you guys are working for me now. So if you're a tax collector for the Byzantine Empire or an administrator, they capture your town. They don't kill you. They don't torture you. They say, look, you're working for us now. So from now on, when you collect taxes, you're not giving them to the Byzantine Empire anymore. You're giving them to the Ottoman Empire. And in this way, they're able to govern the areas they conquer. Now, there's kind of a problem here, though, because they're Muslims conquering Christians and Jews. It's primarily Christians. And so what does this mean, right? This could easily cause a problem. What do they have to do in terms of religion? Well, in Islam, Christians and Jews can keep their religion if they pay a tax. And so these people they conquered, instead of just being killed or whatever, we're told you have two choices. You can pay the tax and keep your religion, or you can convert to Islam. Most will pay the tax and keep their religion. But the key thing was they had a system that allowed them to tolerate these people. Right? So instead of saying, oh, I'm sorry, we got to kill you guys, we have to expel you because you're the wrong religion, even though you have useful skills, they can say, oh no, we got a way that you guys can stay here. You can keep your religion as long as you pay this tax, and then we're going to keep using you for your skills, your administrative knowledge, and so forth. And then, of course, those tax collectors will fund the army so they can continue to expand even more. Oops. Now, what problem of loyalty did the Ottoman Empire face? How did it deal with it? So remember, China faced a problem of loyalty. How do you stop officials from being corrupt? And remember, if they're too corrupt, the government gets run poorly, and then you get overthrown. The Ottomans had the same problem. And I also added in this problem in that people tend to be more loyal to their families than to the government, right? I mean, I tend to think of my wife and my kids first. I think that's kind of natural. So how do you deal with that problem? How do you get officials who will be loyal to you and put you first before even their own families? And they developed what were called janissaries. Janissaries were these administrators and soldiers who were recruited from Christian children who were forced to convert to Islam. Right? So for the most part, the Ottoman Empire played by the rules, except in this exception. Right? In this exception, they would force these Christians to convert to Islam so they could use them as janissaries, as soldiers and administrators, and they took them away from their families. Right? So they would take you away from your family and force you to convert to Islam. Well, this actually worked really, really well. That's one reason why they're willing to do it. They broke the religious rules because practically this worked well. Because what happens is if you're taken away from your family and from your old religion, the only person you have to depend on is the Sultan, the Ottoman Emperor himself. I have to be loyal to the Emperor because I ain't got any other choice. No one else is going to help me. I'm away from my family. I'm away from my old religion. I only have the Ottoman Sultan to rely on. So this actually works pretty well for this system. Get all the questions there? Yeah. How did women wield power in the Ottoman Empire? That was one where we watched a video. And the key thing I wanted people to get was women did indeed wield power, but it was through their relationships with men. Right? These women didn't have power on their own. But if you had a powerful husband, like the Sultan, the Emperor, or if you had a powerful son, like the Sultan, the Emperor, you could influence that person. Right? And you could have power that way. So women could wield power, it's just they had to do so through the men. And part of this class, of course, is examining how women will be able to develop their own power that they can wield themselves rather than working through men to do it. Okay, why didn't science develop within the Ottoman Empire? And that was, the key thing was, remember, there was a struggle. There was an argument in Islam. Some Muslims said that religion is threatened by science. They said science is bad for religion, that people who believe in science will no longer believe in religion. And those are people who said things like, we shouldn't have printed books, right? We should only have hand-copied books. We don't want printed books because it allows people to exchange the wrong kind of knowledge too quickly. But you had other Muslims like Taqiyuddin. Taqiyuddin said, he's a scientist, by the way, Taqiyuddin said, you know, I think science is a good thing. I think science and religion go together just fine. And he just had kind of bad luck. Remember, he built the observatory so he could help develop science. And one thing we see in Section 3 is how important astronomy is in the early scientific revolution. But the observatory doesn't work. There's a problem with the observatory. Let me back up again. They observe a comet. Remember, and people were very curious, what's a comet mean? And the Sultan said, okay, Taqiyuddin, you saw this comet. What does that mean? What's going to happen? In this time period, astrology and astronomy are kind of the same thing. And Taqiyuddin says, it means we're going to win a big victory. Because you don't want to give the Sultan bad news. You don't want to say to the Sultan, we're going to get beat up. He said, we're going to win a victory. And the problem was, they lost the battle. Right? They lost the battle. So Taqiyuddin, the scientist, is asked, this isn't science, this is astrology. He's asked to predict what this comet means. He predicts incorrectly. And so all the religious people who think that Islam and science don't go together say, see what happens? This science stuff is bad, it's worthless, it's useless, let's not have anything to do with it. So what happens is those people gain power. It's not that Islam is inherently anti-science, but in the Ottoman Empire, Muslims who saw science as a threat are going to win in the struggle. And Muslims who think science is just fine, like Taqiyuddin, are going to lose. What problem did Muslim rulers face in India? How did Akbar try and solve that problem? How did he treat non-Muslims? So remember, in India you've got this big problem because you have a Muslim minority ruling a Hindu majority. Right? You've got a Muslim minority ruling a Hindu majority. And also Hindus are not people of the book. They do not, in Islam, they're not covered by this whole tolerance thing automatically. Like Christians and Jews, it's very clear in Islam, you have to tolerate them. These people, you could actually say, you guys have to give up your religion or you have to leave or you will die. Right? You could make that threat. However, that would be a really bad idea from a policy standpoint. It wouldn't work. Right? The majority of people are Hindus. You're going to kill the whole country to rule it? Who's going to pay the taxes? Who's going to work in the government? This is a big problem. So you have Muslims ruling, are a small minority ruling a Hindu majority, and it's not clear how you're going to tolerate them, doctrinally speaking. Well, Akbar decides to deal with this problem by just being very, very tolerant. Right? He will go beyond the rules, in a sense. Right? He's kind of the opposite of the Ottomans, where he's going to be, the Ottomans at times were more intolerant than they were supposed to be, because of the Janissaries, right? They were usually following the rules, but then they broke them with the Janissaries. For the same kind of reason, for political reasons, he's going to be more tolerant than he has to be. Because he will allow Hindus to keep their religion even if they don't pay the tax. Right? The Islamic doctrine is Christians and Jews can keep their religion if they pay the tax. He sees their position is so weak, the Muslim position is so weak, he's like, you don't have to pay the tax. You guys can just keep your religion if you want it. And this worked really, really well because it meant that he had a foundation from which he could go out and conquer them. Right? He's going to be a big expander of the empire. What was Jahangir's policy towards sati? Why did he follow that particular policy? Remember, sati is when a widow is burned along with her husband. So the husband would die and would be cremated, and the woman would throw herself on the fire and be burned alive with him. And the big problem during the time period, I mean, this looks like a problem, from our perspective. Another problem was sometimes the woman didn't willingly do this. Sometimes she was just thrown on the funeral pyre and was just burned along with her husband. So Jahangir, being a devout Muslim, said, well, wait a second. This is either suicide or murder. Right? If the woman chooses to do this, this is suicide. If the woman is forced to do this, this is murder. Both these things are wrong. Right? He's a Muslim. Life is sacred. You can't commit suicide in Islam, and you're not supposed to murder in Islam. So from his perspective, this is a problem. However, if he tries to just forbid it, then he's not being tolerant of Hinduism, and the Hindus will be angry. So his answer is to restrict it. Right? He can't just put up with it because he thinks it's murder or suicide. He can't just get rid of it completely, because then Hindus would say, wait a second, you're messing around our religion. I thought you guys had this policy of tolerance. If you're not tolerant, we're going to rebel against you. So what he decides to do is to restrict it as much as possible. Right? He's going to restrict it as much as possible. Why did Shah Jahan build the Taj Mahal? How was it influenced by Islam? And I'm cutting that last question. We didn't really cover it. Well, remember, first of all, I mean, the basic story was, remember, his beloved wife dies. So he builds this as like her tomb / mausoleum, right? So it's understood as a testament of their love, right? That's the traditional understanding, and that understanding is correct. But we wanted to add something to this, right? Because remember, this is meant to be kind of a model of paradise, right? The building is like where God will have his throne, and the people who are, that's where God will judge people at the end, and the good people will, get to go to paradise, and that's where Shah Jahan thought his wife would be waiting for him. Right, so there's this idea that through religion, they would be once again brought together. Okay.